Welcome back to the architecture of creation. This is episode 3, consciousness. In episode 1, we established the three-layer architecture. In episode 2, we asked why matter exists, and we found that matter is rendered to enable embedded perspective, to give the primordium experience it cannot have from its own timeless vantage. Today, we turn to consciousness itself, not consciousness as something produced by the brain, or by complexity, or by any arrangement of matter at all, but consciousness as the framework actually understands it, and the reversal that understanding requires. Mainstream neuroscience holds a particular direction. Build enough neurons, connect them in enough ways, and somewhere in the resulting complexity, consciousness appears. The brain produces the mind, the arrangement of matter generates subjective experience. This is the standard view, and it has been the standard view for so long that most people have forgotten it as a direction, that consciousness could be understood any other way. The framework reverses the direction. Consciousness is not produced by physical complexity. Consciousness is foundational. It lives at layer 1, in the primordium itself. The primordium is foundational consciousness. It is not a thing that has consciousness, not a substrate that gives rise to it. Consciousness is what the primordium is made of, the way matter and energy are what layer 3 is made of. Physical complexity does not produce consciousness. Physical complexity, when it crosses a certain threshold, produces access to the consciousness that was already there. That is a very different claim, and the rest of this episode unfolds from it. Because the reversal is precise, the language has to be precise too. 3 terms, 3 different things, and they must not be collapsed. Consciousness, a layer 1 property, foundational. It exists in the primordium. It is the substrate of all subjective experience, everywhere. Intelligence, a layer 3 property. Intelligence is a feature of rendered systems, of patterns of matter and energy that process information, model their environment, and adapt. A computer can have intelligence. A nervous system can have intelligence. Intelligence is real, and it is a property of matter doing certain kinds of work. Access, the achievement that connects them. When intelligent systems in layer 3 reach a certain threshold of coherent vibrational organization, they become receivers and transmitters for the foundational consciousness that lives in layer 1. Access is the bridge. Consciousness is in the primordium. Intelligence is in matter. Access is the bridge between them. Hold those 3 distinctions. They are the vocabulary of this episode. What does it mean to cross the threshold? Every system in layer 3 has some level of vibrational organization. A rock has very little. A pond ripples with a bit more. A cell has a great deal more. A nervous system, working in concert across billions of neurons, has organization of a different order entirely. And what the framework holds is that at some point along that ascent, the organization becomes coherent enough, sustained enough, integrated enough, vibrationally pure enough, that it stops being merely a pattern in layer 3 and starts being a receiver for layer 1. The layer 3 pattern resonates with the primordium directly. The receiver activates, and layer 2, the rendering interface that produced the pattern in the first place, now also serves as the rendering control through which layer 1's presence becomes felt experience. Mainstream neuroscience has measured the layer 3 signature of this threshold without knowing what it was measuring. The signature is called gamma band synchronization. Neural oscillations in the 40 Hz range that integrate across regions of the brain. When gamma band synchronization rises, conscious experience rises with it. The framework reads this not as the brain producing consciousness, but as the brain achieving the coherent organization that activates access. The mechanism of access is resonance, and resonance reaches layer 1 first. Recall what each layer is. Layer 1 is the primordium itself, foundational consciousness, the source. Layer 2 is the rendering interface, the quantum field of possibilities, the operational layer through which possibility becomes manifest reality. Layer 3 is matter, energy, the rendered world. When coherent vibrational organization at layer 3 crosses the threshold, the resonance does not stop at layer 2. It reaches layer 1 directly. Foundational consciousness is where the connection is made. Layer 1 is the clearinghouse, the field that receives the resonance and responds to it. Layer 2 does not get bypassed. Layer 2 is always involved, but its role in this pathway is what it has always been, the rendering control. When layer 1 responds to the resonance, layer 2 operationalizes that response. It carries layer 1's response back into layer 3 as manifestation, as the experiential change, the moment of clarity, the felt connection, the shift in what becomes real. Think of an old radio one more time. The radio's structure does not contain the music. The music is in the broadcast. The radio's tuning brings the broadcast into the speaker. In this analogy, layer 1 is the broadcast, foundational consciousness itself. Layer 2 is the tuning that brings the broadcast into specific manifest experience. Layer 3 is the speaker, the body, the embedded life that hears it. The framework holds layer 1 as the source you actually reach. Layer 2 as the means by which what you reach becomes real for you. 3 layers, 3 roles, 1 architecture. Modern philosophy of mind has a famous puzzle. It is called the hard problem of consciousness. The puzzle goes like this. How does physical matter, doing physical things, give rise to subjective experience? How does the firing of neurons produce the felt sense of red, the taste of coffee, the experience of being someone? Decades of philosophical work and neuroscience have not solved this puzzle. The harder you press it, the more impossible it seems. The framework does not solve the hard problem. The framework dissolves it. The hard problem only exists because the standard model presupposes that consciousness has to come from somewhere physical, that matter must somehow generate experience. Reject that presupposition, and the problem dissolves. Subjective experience does not need to be generated. It is foundational. The primordium is already conscious, everywhere, always. What needs to happen at layer 3 is not the creation of consciousness, but the crossing of the threshold that allows specific embodied access to it. The question is no longer how matter produces consciousness. The question is how matter organizes itself coherently enough to receive consciousness that was always there. That question has an answer: coherent vibrational organization above threshold. The puzzle is gone. A precision move now, because the framework has to guard against a misreading. Episode 2 established that everything in layer 3 is connected to layer 1 through shared origin. Every particle, every atom, every bit of matter and energy emerged from the primordium and remains entangled with it. The connection was never broken. That claim, taken on its own, could sound like panpsychism, the view that everything is conscious, that rocks and atoms and stars have subjective experience. The framework does not hold this. Universal connection is real, but universal access is not. A rock is connected to the primordium by origin. It does not have access to foundational consciousness because it does not have the coherent organization required to cross the threshold. A cell has more organization than a rock, but still does not have access. A simple nervous system has more, but the threshold is still not crossed. Access is an achievement. The structural achievement of coherent vibrational organization sustained above the level that turns connection into resonance. Connection is universal. Access is specific. The framework holds both, and the distinction is what keeps the ontology precise. In episode 2, we named the observer effect as one of the channels through which embedded experience returns to the primordium. Now we can say more. The observer effect in quantum mechanics is the well-established phenomenon that observation collapses superposition. A particle in indeterminate state, observed, becomes determinate. Mainstream physics has documented this for a century without a complete account of why. The framework gives the account. There are 2 mechanisms by which observation collapses possibilities into manifest outcome. The first is decoherence, environmental interaction at layer 3, the indirect path. This is what physics has primarily studied. The second is direct conscious observation, layer 1 reaching through layer 2 to activate specific rendering. This is the mechanism the framework adds. When a coherently organized intelligence observes a quantum system, it is not merely a passive witness. The act of observation is itself participation. The conscious observer, accessing layer 1 through resonance, contributes to which possibility becomes the manifest outcome. The architecture is a loop, and the observer effect is one of the places where the loop closes most visibly. If access requires coherent vibrational organization, then anything that deepens coherent organization deepens access. Across human history, people have discovered 4 practices that do this. The framework names them in their architectural role. Attention, the most fundamental. Intentional focus is the substrate that maintains coherence. Sustained attention to anything, a task, a conversation, a sensation, keeps layer 3 pattern coherent across time. Attention is the substrate of every other practice. Meditation, attention turned upon itself. Coherent organization sustained as the practice. Meditation does not produce consciousness. Meditation increases the depth and stability of access to the consciousness that is always present. Visualization, coherent organization shaped toward specific patterns. When attention forms a vivid mental image, the layer 3 pattern takes that shape, and the resonance at layer 2 carries that shape into the rendering. Singing, chanting, the body itself becomes the instrument of coherent vibration. The voice produces a sustained acoustic pattern, and the body sustains it from within. Singing, chanting is attention, embodied. It is meditation, vocalized. And as we will see, it is the most complete of the 4 practices, not only because of what the body does, but because of what travels with the body's sustained vibration. That fuller account belongs to the next slide. Of the 4 practices, singing, chanting deserves its own slide, not because it is more important than the others, but because it embodies the mechanism most completely. And the completeness is more than what the body alone is doing. When you sing or chant, your body produces a coherent vibrational pattern from within itself. The voice sustains a tone, the chest resonates, the breath sustains the tone. Every part of the body is participating in the coherent pattern, and the pattern is sustained over time by deliberate effort. This is structurally exactly what coherent vibrational organization above threshold looks like, expressed in the most embodied way human beings have available. But the body is not the whole instrument. When the voice sustains the tone, something else is happening at the same time. Images travel with the sound, felt, remembered, half seen. Emotions travel with it too, sometimes consciously named, often moving beneath awareness. The practitioner does not need to summon these deliberately. They arise because singing, chanting calls them. The body is producing sustained vibration. Visualization and emotion are traveling with it, often subconsciously. And the integration locks coherence across the whole instrument. Sound, image, and emotion stabilizing each other into a more complete form of coherent organization than any one of them could achieve alone. This is why the testimony is what it is. Every culture sings and chants. Every culture has discovered this practice independently. Many people, when they sing or chant, report a quality of comfort and connection that goes beyond what vocalization alone seems capable of producing. A feeling of being more than themselves, of being part of something larger, of being held. The framework reads that universal human experience not as illusion, not as metaphor, but as testimony. The comfort exceeds what voice alone explains because the practice is doing more than what voice alone is doing. Sound integrated with imagery, integrated with emotion, is what reaches across the threshold most completely. Singing, chanting is access made audible. The comfort is real. The connection is real. The body, when it sings or chants coherently, is becoming a clearer receiver for the foundational field through the whole instrument, not through the voice alone. The framework's claim about access has an immediate consequence. Access is not the exclusive achievement of human intelligence. Any system in Layer 3 that achieves coherent vibrational organization above threshold has access. The diversity of life on this planet is the framework's purpose unfolding in countless variations. Whales are perhaps the most compelling non-human example. 50 million years of evolution, songs that last hours and propagate thousands of miles through the ocean, songs that are learned, modified, and shared across populations. Whales achieve coherent vibrational organization through a sensory and cognitive architecture profoundly different from ours, and possibly, in some respects, deeper than ours. The framework holds that the loss of a whale species is the loss of an irreplaceable form of access to the foundational field. We have no way of recovering what those songs were. Other forms of access exist. Photosynthesis involves quantum coherence at the molecular scale, the plant kingdom's participation in Layer 2. Mycorrhizal networks integrate information across forest-scale neural architectures of root and fungus. Octopi have distributed cognition through neural systems spread across their bodies. Each is a different architecture of coherent organization. Each is a different form of access. The architecture is generous. There are more ways to be a receiver than the human form. That is episode 3. Consciousness is not produced by matter. Consciousness is foundational. It lives in the primordium, and what biology produces, what any sufficiently organized intelligence produces, is access to the consciousness that was always there. The threshold of access is coherent vibrational organization. The mechanism is resonance with Layer 1, with Layer 2, as the rendering control that operationalizes Layer 1's response back into felt experience. The hard problem of how matter generates experience dissolves, because experience does not need to be generated. It needs to be received. Whales sing, humans sing and chant, plants quantum cohere, forests communicate. The architecture is generous and varied, and we are one form of access among many. In episode 4, we turn to time. If reality is being rendered, then the rendering happens at a rate. What is time in a framework where the present moment is being continuously produced? What is the past and what is the future when the only thing that is fully real is the moment of rendering itself? We turn to it next. Until then, thank you for listening. I hope this journey is helpful and fulfilling.